Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe Samaniego here. With me today, we have Isha Azim from Racing with Isha's, Jackson Todd from 36X Racing, and reporting live from the Thermal Club. You may have heard a couple cars gone by. Jackson Lambros from Outlap Media. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin DeShell, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, for paying the bills and helping making this day possible for Jackson and for our Grid Network team to be reporting more tracks besides Portland. We're very excited to have Jackson in Portland. The cars, you can hear them going by. Big thank you to our super chats. If you want to send a super chat or buy me a coffee to Jackson, particularly at Thermal Club, we will forward him. Just make sure you mention it in the comments. Jackson Lambros, we'll start with you from the Thermal Club. What's the latest on the track? Because we could hear them.
Joe, it is the vibes here are immaculate is the best way I could describe it. Weather here so far has been completely fantastic. So far, guys have been definitely having that testing mentality. And by that, I mean they're treating these as open test sessions. We're having 4 of those today. This is 3 of 4, almost 10 hours in total on track. But starting yesterday, we really did start seeing these guys test the limits. Best example, where I'm looking right here, turn 17, this long right-hander. These guys are running right up off of the edge of the curb, and they are they are catching air. So I can't tell you exactly what the battle is going to be like wheel to wheel, but we're definitely seeing guys test the limits of these tracks and these cars.
Now, Jackson, you mentioned they're testing the limits of the cars. Overall, how would you describe the atmosphere here? Because this is a very different, unique track where it's an executive exclusive club. We know there was a small number of tickets for sale, so it's not your typical IndyCar event, and there's no points on the line at all.
Yeah, I mean, paddock-wise, you don't see a ton of people necessarily walking around, hugging hanging outside of the garages or hanging by the pit boxes. And that's because pretty much everyone here is a part of the action one way or another. You've got patrons who have been paying top dollar to either, be inside the garages and kind of be along with the team for this experience. And I think that's exactly what they intended here to make potential connections with future sponsors, with future supporters of the series. And this is by no means the only kind of track to have this country club kind of environment. Thermal Club, Monticello in New Jersey, none quite bring the star power and the capital like Thermal Club out here in Coachella Valley. And I think overall it's going exactly how Jay Fry, Mark Miles, and Roger Penske planned. Regarding the actual on-track battles itself, I think people have seen it as a two-way street, right? We could either see absolute chaos, shades of Laguna Seca, where no championship points on the line, we're going to go balls to the wall. Or if it's only $1 million, all I'm really going to do is just keep the car in one piece and make sure I'm not, taking any damage and I have to pay that out of pocket. Talked to a lot of guys yesterday. The only reason these guys will go for the win, regardless of where it is. Championship points, if anything, means you've got less to worry about. So I think these guys are going to want to go wheel to wheel. I think the matter is whether or not this track is going to cater to that. And with how much running we've seen, we really don't know yet. And I don't think we are going to find out until this first heat tomorrow morning. And we will be with you every step of the way when that happens. But so far, only good things here, Joe.
Amazing to hear. Got to ask you, with everything you said, we saw a lot going on yesterday. What are some of your thoughts entering today? What are some of the key points you're going to be looking for?
Definitely eyes on Christian Lundgaard. Was fastest here last year consistently through testing. Eyes on Will Power. He's in classic Will Power mode, and by that I mean he's got that one-lap pace. So we could really see something magic from him there. Ignore anything I said last week at the round table. I would absolutely consider Grosjean in the mix. I think that's the really cool thing. We've got so many underdogs with the ability to make something cool happen here, especially with this format. Group 1, incredibly stacked. You've got a lot of rookies kind of in the deep end with Scott Dixon, a lot of the Penske guys. Second heat, you've got all of the McLaren guys, including Callum Ilott. Eyes on Callum Ilott, by the way. That's a guy who we might be seeing a little bit more than we initially thought, and who might have a really, really good chance to prove himself for a full-time seat next year. But I think no matter which way you look at it today and tomorrow, it's going to be a good show.
Going to be a good show, and we're very excited to have you there, Jackson. We encourage everyone, be sure to see the Friday recap right here on YouTube. Jackson, enjoy the day there, and we'll be back to you probably tomorrow for the wrap-up show. And with that said, we'll go ahead and switch the focus over to Formula One. Formula One, big race weekend, the Australian Grand Prix, one of the more exciting, popular races, and Max Verstappen looks like he's going to try to stink the show. He once again took the pole, but I will say this, though. Carlos Sainz, he was looking very fast, brought the speed, just 2/10 off Max Verstappen's pole time. Perez, he was going to be third, but he's been handed a penalty, so he's going to be a little further back. So in that second row, you got Lando Norris in the McLaren and Carlos Sainz's teammate, Charles Leclerc. Isha, starting with you. Sainz put in a faster quality effort than Perez, nearly as fast as Verstappen. Do you believe Sainz could again stop the Max Verstappen winning streak?
Joe, tough question. I'd love to believe that. But looking at the practice sessions and Q1 and Q2, Carlos Sainz was doing a phenomenal job, especially considering that it's only been 2 weeks since his surgery. So, first off, he's doing a phenomenal job. But, when it comes time to actually put in all that you've got, Max just always comes out on top. No matter what any other driver does, Max Verstappen always takes the pole, as we saw. Carlos Sainz was putting up a phenomenal performance, and then Q3 comes along, and Max is suddenly in the pole position. So this is something that I was talking to Josh about as well on JB Motorsports this morning when we were covering the qualifying session, and we kept betting on Carlos Sainz, but in the end, Max is on pole position. So I guess we're just gonna have to watch and see what happens, but I think we all know how it's gonna end.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happened. I think Carlos Sainz, he needs Ferrari to give them a good race. No mistakes in the pits, a strategy that is perfect. The start, I think, has to be really good too. It's going to be hard, but we'll see what happens. Throw it back to Jackson Todd.
Yeah, so our top 10 starters for the Australian Grand Prix, we have 2 Red Bulls, 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens, 2 Aston Martins, 1 VCARB, and just 1 Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, he missed out on Q3 and will be starting 11th in tonight or tomorrow morning's Grand Prix. Hamilton said this is the least confident he's ever felt with this car. Is this a sign of trouble or tension between Lewis and Mercedes, with Hamilton set to leave at the end of the season?
I don't know. I feel like it'll be a little uncharacteristic of Toto Wolff and the Mercedes team to say, oh, we're going to withhold a little bit more data, so ensuring Lewis does not share anything with Ferrari. I feel like they will have a lot more trust between the two of them. This could be just simply the car is just not to Lewis's standard. I mean, George Russell, he got in the top 10, but 7th overall, I don't think it's that great. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the race. And I still think we're just going to need more time. We're only 2 races into the year. Maybe there's going to be another track where this car just feels a lot better for Lewis. That's why I'm thinking it's a little too early to think that we might be seeing tension between Lewis and Mercedes.
Yeah, Joe, I completely agree with you. First off, there's a lot of respect and trust in the relationship between Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff, as you pointed out. So, I don't think we're going to see any problems on that end, really. Obviously, we can tell that the Mercedes is not a great car so far, but it has only been a few races. We still have the whole rest of the season to go. So I think we're sort of just going to have to watch and see what happens. We can tell that Lewis Hamilton is quite frustrated with the car, as is George Russell, but he is outperforming Hamilton a little bit. But I don't really think that this is a sign of a lot of internal trouble or tension within the team.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with what you guys said there. There is one major storyline this weekend. There will only be 19 cars starting in the Grand Prix. Alex Albon had a major crash earlier in the weekend for the 2nd year in a row in Australia. This weekend in practice, hit some curbing, then hit the wall. chassis is so damaged that it is unusable for the rest of the Grand Prix. Williams has brought no additional car, and they have decided to sit Logan Sargent and put Alex Albon in Sargent's car for the rest of the weekend. According to motorsport.com, there's also a chance Williams will not have a second car ready for Japan next week. Kind of a three-pronged question here. How embarrassing and bad is this for Logan Sargent, for Williams, and for Formula One as a whole?
I'm gonna try to answer this in a respectful way, but this is really, really tough. It's very embarrassing for Williams and for Formula One. Logan Sargent, I feel extremely awful for. Poor guy, and he's doing it with such like maturity. Like he's not saying anything bad about Williams, saying how he's gonna be so supportive of the team and do whatever they need for them. And I think it's just really, really sad. Um, Alex Albon's the one who made the mistake. So why is Logan Sargent paying for it? We understand, everybody knows that Alex Albon's going to score more points than Logan Sargent, but sometimes the decision that's best for the team isn't the right decision, as is the case here. And I think that it's a very, very tough situation they've put Logan Sargent in, as well as Alex Albon, because, everybody's thinking about how sad it is for Logan Sargent, but Alex Albon's also in a tough position now, because they just took his teammate's car and gave it to him because he crashed his. So I think it's a really, really bad spot that Williams has put the two drivers in. And considering that Logan Sargent's the only American driver on the field, this is not going to be good for the American fan base that Formula One is trying to grow. But overall, it's an awful situation. And I think that Williams has gone about handling it entirely wrong.
I have to 100% agree. Williams is just doing this horribly wrong. And in the past, we've seen where they'll have a spare car race, especially in the era where you have a start, a big crash, the driver can run to the spare car, jump in it. To hear that Williams is not a brand new team and they were caught off guard. Williams has been around the sport a long time. To not have a spare car available, I just find it shocking, and it just really raises the question, well, where is the state of this team? We keep hearing, oh, they're making good progress. We've seen the results, but to not have a spare car and, worst case scenario, not have one for the following weekend, I think this raises a lot of eyebrows. I'm like, okay, where's Williams? How big is this gap between the teams that Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, to Williams, Haas, the backmarker teams, Sauber, they've just been looking dreadful. I think this is really puts Williams in the bad spot, especially with their sponsors, because the sponsors are not going to be happy that they put in all this money and effort. They're only going to have one car out there because the team did not have the funds for whatever reason bring a second car. And Logan Sargent, which the American driver, American sponsors like Duracell, American audience, how many are going to stay up early in the morning on the East Coast to watch this race? For those in the West Coast, you got to benefit. It's like a 9 p.m. start time or 10 p.m. And here we are having this issue. I just think it's just really bad. And for F1, I think the time is just absolutely horrible. I think F1 has to be pretty upset that Williams has found themselves in this situation, because with all the negative news regarding with Horner, the FIA president, now charges from Susie Wolf in the French courts, this has just gone from what a lot of people thought would be an uneventful 2024 season to eventful for all the wrong reasons and outside the track.
Yeah,
They'll love to see a race get good action, but this is just embarrassing and a poor look. And I just think the FIA has to be really upset that this is occurring.
yeah, definitely. I think another piece that has to be mentioned here is, the Andretti situation. I can't sit here and not bring it up. Even aside of Logan being an American driver, but just the fact that Andretti gets rejected because they're not going to bring value to Formula One, and yet one of Formula One's most established, longest tenured teams can't even bring a second car to the Grand Prix, but Andretti would be, hurting the value of Formula One. I have to mention that here in this discussion. Adam in the chat, a lot of emotions involving the news of Logan Sargent, and you have to also consider the history of Williams and what I don't know what the best way to phrase their most recent seasons are, but not great. All right, so now we're going to jump over into a Formula One lightning round. First up in the lightning round, Oscar Piastri is starting 6th in his home country Grand Prix. Is he a podium contender?
I don't think so, Jackson. He's got too many other really, really skilled drivers that have put up a great pace so far. Oscar's done well too, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, podium is out of reach. I think Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc could be good contenders for that, unless you have a crash or something that takes him out. I don't think Piastri is going to get a podium here.
All right. Yuki Tsunoda is starting 8th. Daniel Ricciardo is starting 18th. What pressure is this starting position and kind of the whole Red Bull driver situation as a whole? What kind of pressure is on Daniel Ricciardo to perform at a higher level than his teammate?
Everyone was so excited for Daniel Ricciardo to replace Nick DeVries. Everybody thought he is going to be contending to try to get that Red Bull seat away from Sergio Perez. He is not performing, and after what happened at Bahrain between the two teammates, Yuki just seems more motivated. I do think the pressure is going to start building.
Yeah, right there with you, Joe. There's definitely got to be a lot of pressure on Daniel Ricciardo, not only to outperform Yuki Tsunoda and to try to secure himself a spot with Red Bull, but also to just perform better in his home Grand Prix. To come in 18th for quali is definitely not a good look at the Australian Grand Prix that you want to try to do your best on.
Yeah, definitely. Ricciardo starting in 18th. Both Alpines are starting in front of Ricciardo, which is an interesting benchmark. Alpines starting 15th and 17th, their best starting positions yet this season. Between the two cars, they have just one top 15 finish this year. With one less car on the grid this weekend, could both cars finish in the top 15 in Australia?
No.
For Alpine.
No, the Alpine is one of the worst cars on the grid this season, and Logan Sargent being out of the running is not enough for them to suddenly, come in the top 15. I don't see it happening.
Last year, it ended with heartbreak for the two of them crashing into each other. I think that heartbreak continues. They're just going to be in the back of the pack waiting for this race to end.
Tough in the Alpine camp. Not so tough. Oliver Bierman, after a great effort out with Mercedes, scoring points. He is currently a Haas reserve driver and then made that remarkable rookie debut for Ferrari. There are rumors that he could be going to Haas in 2025. Is Magnussen or Hülkenberg more at risk of being replaced?
I'm going to say Hülkenberg. I just feel like even though he got the point, Magnussen, he just seems to always gel with the team. When he can get points, he will. Hülkenberg's a little bit up there in age too. I think Hülkenberg.
This is a really good question. It's not something I've thought about, but Joe, I think I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think that Behrman could take Magnussen's place.
Wow.
Interesting. All right, Valtteri Bottas, he's starting 13th today. He had a pretty entertaining Uber ad that came out this week. Can he take some of that momentum? His 13th place starting position. Will Bottas get points this weekend?
I don't see it happening. I just realized that my answers to a lot of these lightning round questions were no. But I don't see it happening. There's so many drivers in front of him who have great pace with the cars that we've seen during the practice sessions. I don't think so.
Sauber, they just seem race pace, race luck, not there. I mean, the only reason why Alpine finished ahead of Bottas in Bahrain was because Bottas had those issues. He just seems to get bad luck. I just don't think the team is capable of getting him in the top 10.
All right, that will conclude our lightning round. Last year, we saw a very chaotic Australian Grand Prix. There were 4 safety car periods occupying 13 laps, and there were just 12 cars running at the end of the Grand Prix, including a NASCAR-esque green-white checkered finish. Do you anticipate another chaotic race tonight, Isha?
I think I do. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be chaotic, but I think that we're going to see some issues. In the quali session and the practicing, we have noticed that a lot of the drivers have struggled with the curbs and the corners. And so during the race, when you've got all these drivers that actually competing with each other, I think that's just going to make the situation worse. And I think we might see a safety car maybe, or just some small issues. I don't think it's going to be too chaotic, but I think that there will be some on track issues happening during the race.
I agree. I think especially with the walls so close, this is mostly a street circuit. You're gonna have these speeds. I think we're gonna see at least one, maybe two safety car periods in this race. So when it comes to strategy, I think a lot of drivers are going to be really making sure their team is aware of what's going on around the track. If they see potential trouble, like a car goes off potentially into the barrier, you're going to see the teams, the ones that are just positioned perfectly to hit pit road, they're going to try to get in. What can spoil everything though is the red flags, because the red flags, we know everyone gets to change their tires regardless of where you're running. So overall, I think it's going to make it really tricky for the strategy. That's going to make it a bit chaotic. The drivers, they got a lot of passing opportunities. I think this is going to be really one of those races. Again, it's going to live up to the hype. It might be not the most exciting race for the lead, but I think we're going to have a very exciting race for everyone that stays up to watch this down in Australia.
All right, the F1 Australian Grand Prix is tonight at midnight if you're on the East Coast, and also properly tonight through the rest of the US. All right, Isha, let's switch over to NASCAR, also racing at a Formula One circuit this weekend.
That's right, Jackson. The NASCAR Cup Series is at the Circuits of the Americas for the fourth consecutive year. This weekend's field is the second largest with 39 teams on the entry list, one shy of the maximum 40 starting positions. Now, in the three several road course specialists that are not racing full time this year, we have AJ Allmendinger, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Kamui Kobayashi. Now, Cup Series drivers that are known for being good on road courses include Michael McDowell, Daniel Suarez, and some past winners like Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, and Chase Elliott. So, Jackson, here's the first question. Does this set up a short list of favorites, or do you see more potential contenders for the win?
I think those are certainly some great candidates, but I think you also have to look at, kind of the core front runners of the Cup Series. I think two that I'm going to throw on that list are Alex Bowman and Austin Cindric. They both got top tens in the previous two next gen era COTA races. Also, Ty Gibbs scored a top 10 last year. He looked really good in practice this morning. And I mean, Ty Gibbs, he's on a great run to start this season, currently third in the point standings, up there with his other JGR teammates. So Bowman, Cindric, Gibbs, I think those are other drivers I'm throwing on the list.
Ty Gibbs, he's definitely one to watch. I think some people are going to be anticipating him to potentially challenge for the win. Overall, when it comes to this race, Ryan Blaney is one driver I'm curious to see how he's done. He's won in a couple. He won at the Charlotte Roval. Couldn't remember what it was called, but the Charlotte Roval, he won that. I think he could be up towards the front. Penske, good equipment. Joey Logano's a driver. I feel like he's either going to be up towards the front or he's going to be back in the pack. It's just going to be really interesting to see what he could be doing this race weekend. And overall, I just think the names you read off, Isha and Jackson, I think those are some of the best drivers. Everyone else, they need to have a good day. Martin Truex, he seems to be one of those drivers we always talk about. When he wins, he dominates. He knows how to do that in Sonoma. But then there's just races where it's like he's just there, but not really in contention. So I think overall it's a pretty short list when it comes to favorites in this event.
Yeah, definitely. Those are all some great contenders for the win. Now, this race in the fourth year is a track date that SMI leases out rather than one of its other tracks. So many people are curious about the future of this event with the 2025 schedule and potential changes to the nearby Texas Motor Speedway. So, Joe and Jackson, what are your thoughts on this event and NASCAR coming to COTA?
Overall, I like NASCAR coming to COTA. It really seems this event has sort of grown in popularity and especially attract international drivers. We've got Kamui Kobayashi. Last year we had Jenson Button. In the truck series, Connor Zelish, he is there after coming off an IMSA race class win. You get a lot of international attention. This is at a F1 track, a track that was mainly primarily built to bring F1 back. I think overall, this is just great. You're not far from the city of Austin, so it's a different city compared to Fort Worth, Texas, the Dallas area, just to keep the international presence. The storylines, if Shane Van Gisbergen or Kamui somehow pulls a Shane Van Gisbergen and wins in this race, I think that would be really exciting stuff for NASCAR internationally to get media attention. We know NASCAR has been trying to expand their reach. And overall, I think it's great. I know the race is not exactly the greatest, but I think part of that is the package that they have. Last year was a little bit too chaotic. Those restarts were just caution after caution because they just 6-5 wide and here we go crashing again. But I think this event, it has grown on me. I think it is sort of becoming like the number one road course and most people are excited out, maybe on the level of Watkins Glen though.
Yeah, Joe, you hit a lot of points there that I was going to bring up. I think the first year of this event in 2021, where it was rainy and just the Gen 6 car, it was not a pretty sight in 2021, the rain shortened race. But I think since then, this event has grown. It's become, a better quality of racing, a little messy maybe on the restarts in turn one. But I'm enjoying this event a lot more than I think I was when it was first announced and when it first started. I think it's a great way to start, the first road course of the season at a notable racetrack that has value outside of the NASCAR circles. And I think you bring in a lot of special talent by running at a place like COTA. I think it's a great event that can continue. The one thing that does bother me about this circuit in NASCAR is that the track limits are atrocious. I don't want to be like a super stickler about track limits, but there's specifically turn 8, where you're not only cutting the curb, you're also cutting the white line and you're also cutting into the grass. I think that's a little dramatic. I would like to see that a little corrected, but also it's NASCAR on a road course. It's kind of just the way it is.
Music, so it's time for our lightning round. First question: Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., Ty Gibbs, Ryan Blaney, and Denny Hamlin are the top 5 in points, separated by less than 15 points. Jackson, who leaves as the point leader?
Ty Gibbs, I guess, is my pick. That feels really crazy to say, just in his second full season, he could be leading the points after more than just super speedway races. But only 7 points behind Larson and Truex, and I already kind of hyped him up as a potential contender this weekend. So I'll have to say Ty Gibbs.
Surprisingly, I would have never thought this. I have to agree with you. I feel like Truex, hit or miss. Larson we'll talk about later, but he's not exactly stellar. Blaney, if he has a good day, but I just feel like Ty Gibbs is a sure pick to finish in the top 10 unless he gets in trouble from somebody else spinning him out. Ty Gibbs, that'd be crazy if he could leave with the points lead.
All right, good picks, guys. Joe, back to you. Since winning the Daytona 500, William Byron has only one top 10 finish. Can he finish in the top 10 at COTA?
Yes, he can. I think he's pretty good. This year, I think the race might be a little less chaotic on the restarts. I think he could be in the top 10.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. A top 10 is definitely in the picture for William Byron. He finished 12th in 2022, got a top 5 last year. He might, I don't know, he's up in that winner tier, but I think a top 10 is definitely in the picture for Byron.
All right, Jackson, back to you. Chris Buescher has a record of strong road courses, but no wins. Can he win today?
I don't think so. I think there are just too many drivers that are too good at this kind of racing to allow, a Chris Buescher to win. That's not a knock at Chris Buescher's talent. That's more of a, a celebration of the other drivers' road racing ability. But I don't see a Chris Buescher win today or tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't see a Buescher win. He'll be in the top 10. He'll be up towards the front, but the caliber of this field, especially with Shane Van Gisbergen in there, I think he's top 10. Take that as a great day, but a win that might be just out of reach.
Yeah, also, I'll add one more thing. Buescher kind of sitting near the playoff bubble right now, so, points day is certainly not bad.
All right, Joe, back to you. So in between Austin Cindric, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, who do you think finishes ahead?
My gut says it's going to be Austin Cindric. He's good at the road courses. The way he is sometimes, though, hit or miss, I think Ryan Blaney might finish ahead. So I'm torn between the two. I'm going to go with Blaney.
Yeah, it's the Penske situation this year is fascinating. I think Cindric is going to get the best finish of the three. Again, one that I mentioned earlier. But I think the most notable thing is that Joey Logano is down in the 20s in points, push it towards 30. And like, we're not even considering that he could be the top Penske driver, because I think he finished third in the rain-shortened race in 2021, but 31st and 28th in the last two COTA races. It is not looking good for the two-time champion from Penske.
All right, guys, here's the final question of the lightning round. Last weekend, 35 out of the 36 starters finished the race. Will all 39 finish this time, and if not, how many?
I find it hard to believe all 39 cars will be able to finish this race. I think I'm going to go with the line of 35 finishing cars.
I agree. I'm going to go with 32 cars. I think we might have a pile up somewhere, potentially in the S's, and that's going to take out some 32 cars is my prediction.
All right, guys, those are some interesting numbers. Now, let us take a look at some new things for the year. So one new thing for this year is that the restart zone has been moved back to the final corner's exit. Cars must stay in their lane until they exit the restart zone, and the idea is to have the field more spread out. Now, this will allow us to avoid the chaos of restarts and a one big pack sort of thing entering into turn 1, turn 3, 4, even 5 and 6 wide. So, Joe and Jackson, will this make a big difference and add a premium on qualifying today?
It does put more emphasis on qualifying because you just sort of can't rush towards the front under braking, and good luck everyone, whoever gets pushed, beat out of the way, tough break, because you're going to have a little bit more spread out field. We saw this at the Indianapolis road course. Overall, produced great racing. You're really going to have a good car to work your way towards the front. I will also say I think the pit stops are going to be very important. If you lose spots, you cannot just rely on the restart and just sending it in there and picking it up. I think this is going to make a pretty big difference qualifying. I think that's always important, but I think now this year compared to the past years, even more so.
Yeah, I think one change that I would make is if you're going to move the restart zone back, let's just move it all the way back between turns 19 and 20. I really liked what we saw on the Chicago street course last year, where the restart zone was a corner before the main straightaway. I think it's kind of interesting because if they wanted to move it back that far, they could. But I think a piece of NASCAR still wants to keep a little bit of that turn 1 chaos going. So I think it'll make a little bit of a difference. But I mean, I think turn 1 at COTA is still going to be turn 1 at COTA.
Yeah, a little bit of chaos works sometimes. But
Yeah.
anyways, so I mentioned William Byron earlier, only had one top 10 finish after the Daytona 500. Kyle Busch's only top 10 finish came at Atlanta, third in the 3-wide finish. It was his only top 20 finish, Daytona 500, which he finished in 12th place. Now, the last 3 races, he performed 22nd or worse for the finishing position. His teammate Austin Dillon needs to be faring better. The only finish in the top 20 was 16th at Vegas. So, Jackson, is RCR slumping, and do they start looking at making changes? And if so, then what changes do you think need to be made?
I mean, I think the results speak for themselves. I do wonder what RCR would look like if Kyle Busch had a different teammate. I think, a thought experiment scenario of like Tyler Reddick and Kyle Busch as a team together could maybe give us a better picture of these things. But that being said, I mean, it's tough because even Kyle is like sitting on the playoff bubble right now. I know. I mean, I was really tuned into him for the Las Vegas race, and I mean, he was commenting on how like the Legacy Motor Club cars were like blowing by them on restarts, and I mean, on the radio, Kyle bashed the ECR engines, but I mean, it's tough with RCR. I don't know what to fix. It's a pretty seems like some core problems.
Combination, I think, of core problems. RCR still a 2-car team. When you have the bigger teams at Hendricks, you also got Trackhouse, which they're not a bigger team. They have 2 cars too, but they just seem to have more Chevrolet support, especially with how Ross Chastain's been able to get wins, get media attention, and then of course now Dan Suarez getting a win. They're a step ahead, I feel, of RCR, and RCR maybe stepping a bit back. And I just think this is just one of those deals where at the end of the day, we know there's a pecking order at Chevrolet. I don't think RCR is exactly well up in that pecking order, so I don't know what kind of data they're getting. But Kyle Busch, this isn't the same exact Kyle Busch of the past. He's getting up there in age. People are wondering, how much more is he going to be running? I think this is just something where it's a combination of a myriad of things, and really, for a change to occur, I think you got to talk a little bit about the number 3 car and who's in there too. I remember in the past, especially when Dodge was coming, there was a weird rumor that maybe RCR would switch to Dodge, but a lot of people thought that would never happen. He would always be a Chevrolet person. Now that there's rumors of Honda coming in, could that be something where it could be beneficial? Because, hey, you get the support, but you're going to have the drawback of Toyota's first year was disastrous. You could have a disastrous year. A lot of questions and a lot of unknowns with RCR, and I think you really got to start thinking about, okay, crew chiefs and potentially one particular driver.
Yeah, definitely. And here's a follow-up with that. So Austin Dillon has 377 starts, 4 wins, 22 top 5s, and 75 top 10s. His last win was in 2022 with 5 top 5 finishes, the best of his career. Last year, he saw no wins, 1 top 5, and 7 top 10s. So, Joe, is Austin Dillon starting to raise questions on why he's still in the seat? And does it appear like the NASCAR version of Lance Stroll, a little controversial?
I do think there's people, especially that watch both F1 and NASCAR, are going to start saying, well, he's the same version. He's the Lance Stroll of NASCAR because it's his grandfather's team. I mean, originally the number 3 was not going to come back, but we know Austin Dillon ran the number 3 into trucks. Xfinity brought it up. Yeah, he has the wins, but 2 of them at Daytona. When we look at the Coca-Cola 600, that was a pretty amazing effort. And then Texas Motor Speedway, he had his teammate there helping ensure he got the win. So they're not exactly the most impressive wins. You got those super speedways that it just makes it where if he can win at Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta, now you got a shot at the championship. If we had a traditional point system rather than the playoff system, I think a lot of people will be raising more questions of, is Austin Dillon really capable of getting that championship? Same time, I gotta say this though. NASCAR, and especially Richard Childress, they've had a history of, they're keeping drivers long time. Of course, Dale Earnhardt was there over 20 years. You have Mike Skinner. He had a lot of time, but just couldn't get the job done with a win. Jeff Burton was there a while. Kevin Harvick, a long career, some winless season, but they managed to get wins and performances. I know somebody will say, well, he needs more time, but it's like he's been around quite a long time, over 300 starts. I think people have to start questioning, is he really the best driver, especially when you got Austin Hill in the Xfinity Series?
Yeah, I think he's had plenty of time to perform, and I hate to go into the specifics of a win and try to unjustify them or give a reason that they don't deserve it, but on every single one of Austin Dillon's wins, there's something to grab onto, and it's hard. I mean, he doesn't get into that championship tier, which I think is where, Joe, like you said, a lot of those long tenured RCR drivers reach and do that championship tier, and you just don't see him doing that. I think, and I will admit that last year, I think that was a down year for him specifically. I don't think that's where he, stabilizes. I think he should do better this year than last. But with RCR as a whole on the downswing and Austin Dillon occupying one of those cars, it does quickly turn into a Lance Stroll situation, which maybe we wouldn't have said that, a few years ago when there was still a little bit, the ceiling seemed a little higher. There were more recent wins and the team as a whole wasn't down. But now that the team is down, I think it's becoming more maybe apparent and more of a concern that it is a Lance Stroll situation.
Yeah, good points, guys. And now taking a look at another driver with a bit of a surprise, the points leader, Kyle Larson, in 2021 finished second place at this track. Since then, he's had 29th and 14th place at COTA. compared to his teammate Alex Bowman, who finished 8th, 2nd, and 3rd consecutive top 10 finishes. Now, last week, Bowman finished in the top 5 in a race of tire management. So, Jackson, could Alex Bowman be a sleeper pick this weekend at COTA?
Yeah, I mentioned him earlier in the show for this reason because I definitely do think he's a contender. He's been kind of getting dunked on as the number 4 Hendrick driver, which I mean that is what the standings say. But even then, he's still a top 12 playoff seed right now. He just came off that great week at Bristol that you mentioned and a couple good races at COTA. So I think he's definitely a good sleeper pick heading into this weekend, and I'll be interested to see how that compares to his Hendrick Motorsports teammates.
I have to agree. I think he's a potential sleeper pick as well. The momentum, as he mentioned, from Bristol, that's just going to add confidence in the team. This team, they just seem to have something with this track. The notes, we're not seeing a big drastic change in anything really. I think he's going to qualify well. That's where you're going to be able to say, okay, this is a team to watch to potentially grab a sleeper win. And that would be huge for Alex Bowman. I know last time he got a win this early, he's done a couple times Auto Club, Las Vegas. If he could get it early, lock himself into playoffs, people will still always, well, he's the 4th Hendrick driver. But to be in the playoffs, he'll be the 3rd one. I think that will show that he's still got it and keep a sponsor Ally, which is one of the few sponsors that sponsors just about every single race weekend their car. I think that'll be a huge boost for them to see their car in victory lane, Alex Bowman back, and really just sort of move on from everyone talking about what happened last year with his back injury.
Yes, definitely, Joe. Now, I've got one final question for you two before we do a brief IndyCar preview. So, out of the 3 winners, Ross Chastain was the only one to start outside the top 10 to win. Elliott started in 8th, Tyler Reddick started 2nd in last year's race. So, Joe, with the new restart policy and the return of stage cautions after last year's race, how much does strategy play a factor in this race?
I feel like it's a tricky question because it's like, you got the stage caution, so you sort of box into potentially cutting the stage in half. But depending on how the restarts go and where you make the pace up, you could really start seeing the deviations. We might see again. I forgot about this as well. You got 2 laps to go. You're in 11th place. You're going to hit pit road. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see the strategy aspect. I just don't know what's going to be happening once we get the race going. I think it's going to be a bit more unpredictable than we anticipate.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed to see the stage cautions return. I think that takes a big chunk out of the strategy equation when that there's a yellow flag coming up. I mean, obviously, but I really liked the cautionless road course stage racing that we saw last year, where you still have these marks in the race that you want to go for points, but yet it doesn't impact the strategy of the overall race. So I think, the kind of way it breaks down now is you either go for stage points or you go for the win. And so, that's probably going to mean less people going for the win because one winner versus a lot more stage points available. So, we'll have to see how it plays out. Obviously, maybe teams have a different mindset now after it's gone and comes back. But yeah, I think that'll kind of be the 2 strategy decisions for the race.
Yep. Now, before we continue, we have a comment in the chat room. So, Adam says William Byron with a new track record on the pole for the NASCAR Cup Series at COTA tomorrow. All right. Now, with that being said, that is all for the NASCAR section. As I mentioned, Joe, let's start IndyCar now.
IndyCar, Sorma Club, of course, Jackson Lambros, he's out there covering everything. And I got to say, now that the Thermal Club, the weekends here, we got to encourage everyone, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our coverage, including the recap video from yesterday. And this is very unique because Isha Jackson, I know we haven't had a lot of exhibition races in IndyCar. We know NASCAR has the All-Star race, the Busch Light Clash before the season. I got to ask you both, especially from the worlds of F1 and NASCAR, what are your thoughts on these non-points events? Is it something that it does add that excitement of going for us for the win? And the timing, especially the sense this is only the second event of the year. How do you feel about this coming from your worlds of F1 and NASCAR?
Yeah, Joe. I find it kind of interesting, as Jackson, the other Jackson, was pointing out earlier today. You know, having a race with having a race that's a non-points event, definitely takes away the pressure that a lot of the drivers are experiencing. So that allows them to have more fun. And when you take the pressure out, sometimes you can see some improved racing. And if you see that the drivers are still trying to race and trying to not score points, but win, and they're having fun, that definitely adds to the entertainment factor for the fans. So, looking at it from a Formula One point of view, I think it would be pretty interesting to see a non-points event and how that would shape who the race winner would be, if it would still be Max Verstappen or somebody else. But, seeing how it's only the 2nd event of the year, I find that a little bit strange. I think that if it had happened later on in the season, that would have made more sense, but, I think it's really interesting that it's a non-points event.
Yeah, I think the odd calendar placement kind of hurts the value of this event. I think honestly, if you just put this a few weeks ago and made it a preseason event, kind of the equivalent of, like Bahrain preseason testing or the Clash, and you kind of made it that like back to school kind of feel where it's like everyone's coming back, we're not going to the dust off, and we're just going to go have fun and race and get ready to go for this season. I think bringing that energy to this event could have helped. I think this non-points race placement hurts the start of the season momentum. I think it kind of kills that a little bit because, we're still waiting. We're still nearly a month out from the next points race. And it's, yeah, I just, the event itself, I could see working, but it's hard in this placement on the calendar.
Placement, I feel like I gotta agree with you. If it was preseason, that back to school feel, or towards the middle or the near the end, it's like, okay, we've gone through all this, ratchet up, it would feel more natural. But I think the excitement, as Jackson said, is at the track. He is at the track, and currently right now they're under a red flag in their test session. Callum Ilott has the fastest lap with Alex Palou and Christian Lundgaard, your top three. Potentially some of the track may have come up. We know downforce, that's going to be a big issue. If you have some high winds, depending on which direction it could go, it can increase that downforce. So Jackson, of course, is going to be following this right here on the Grid Network. Be sure to not miss our coverage on social media. Well, one of the things today, assuming we get everything going, qualifying, two groups is going to be very different compared to other qualifying efforts for IndyCar. Taking a look over at Group 1, I think it's going to be really interesting, Jackson, because at the end, Alex Palou was the fastest, Lundgaard, Marcus Armstrong, but everyone's going to be looking at tire wear, where you have essentially these 10-lap heats, but then tire wear is going to be a big issue. Joseph Newgarden was the 17th fastest yesterday. Many wondering where was his speed from St. Petersburg, where he looked unbeatable. Overall, Jackson, could we have potentially seen some sandbagging to hide the true speed before qualifying today?
Maybe, but I think I'm going to choose to interpret the 17th place speed as this is a non-points event. Maybe let's try some new things. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I would expect that whatever possible experiment, or if it was sandbagging, would be wrapped up by the time we get further through the weekend and when, they start writing checks.
Once the checks are out, I think the sandbagging definitely stops. Callum Ilott, he doesn't appear to be sandbagging before the red flag, top of the chart. Isha, I know Callum Ilott has had an interesting journey to IndyCar. The Formula ladder, a lot of people thought he would get an F1. It was him, Mick Schumacher. Schumacher got the seat. He ends up in IndyCar with Hucos Hollinger Racing. Then a single car team was running full time. They run full time. Then the next year, a teammate, Agustin Canapino. Last year, he left after what appears to be some bitterness between him, the team, and all everything going on. And overall, he's back. He's trying to prove a point that he wants to get full time. In total, we have 4 drivers from the F1 world that are here: Alexander Rossi, Roman Grosjean, Marcus Ericsson, and Pietro Fittipaldi, who did a couple starts in 2020. So I got to ask you, Isha, does this send the message that IndyCar is an alternative to F1 and still just as challenging as F1?
Yeah, definitely, Joe. Everybody knows that Formula One is considered the pinnacle of motorsports, but these other racing series are just as competitive and challenging as well. And the biggest piece of evidence to that is when you have Formula One drivers or drivers going through the F3, F2, feeder series going into these other series. So seeing that we have four former Formula One drivers in IndyCar, it's definitely evidence to the fact that IndyCar is also very competitive and challenging. Um, and that, a lot of Formula One drivers can potentially go off into these other racing series as well.
Yeah, these racing series across the globe, where it comes to IndyCar, NASCAR, especially in the grid ranking, some of the best drivers, and of course the grid ranking is coming just a couple weeks, the first Sunday of April. Very exciting. Isha, MotoGP, they're one of the series in the grid ranking, and we just had a pretty eventful sprint race.
Yes, Joe, that's right. Now we have a quite a small MotoGP section here, but a dramatic sprint race that just ended about an hour ago, which saw Pecco Bagnaia, who had a dominant performance, lose the lead with only 4 laps to go. Now this handed the battle between Maverick and Jorge with Marc Marquez in third place. Maverick took the win. Joe, what are your thoughts on the race?
Overall, I thought this was a pretty entertaining race, and it was something we anticipated for this circuit in Portugal, the Portimao circuit. The elevation changes have made this track very challenging for the drivers, very technical. The flowing corners, the elevation change, especially that final corner. That's where we saw Jack Miller had the lead early on. Pecco Bagnaia, he cut the corner better, got the lead. But then Pecco Bagnaia made a mistake under braking, locked up the rears, went wide, almost went off course, came back in fourth place, and this just handed that lead to Maverick Vinales. I thought we were going to have a great battle, but he was able to just pull away in that Aprilia. So that Aprilia has something that we weren't anticipating from the Ducatis. I think this is a good sign that we might have a very entertaining race at Portimao. It's still challenging. We saw a couple riders crash out. That's something where I think this challenging course, the elevation, is just the ultimate test, in my opinion. Because we have other tracks, especially with Jello, they have some elevation changes here and there. But this one, I still remember when F1 went there, they said it felt like a roller coaster. So overall, I think MotoGP, this sprint race, really shows how demanding the circuit is. And I think one of the big things, the Grand Prix itself, that's going to be a test of attrition as usual. Really curious to see what the home country hero, Miguel Oliveira, and that Trackhouse Aprilia could do, because we saw Aprilia today. They got the win. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Also tomorrow, too, we're going to be recapping the Supercar Series in full detail. They're joining F1 at the Melbourne circuit. Brock Feeney won that first race from the pole and took the fastest lap. A lot of folks predicted he was going to sweep it all, but his teammate, Will Brown, responded with a win in race 2. Race 3, again, Brock Feeney responded. So Triple Eight Racing, just one up in each other. The two drivers will have a full report on Grid Life wrap-up from the Supercar Series and all the races. And we'll see who leads the Pick a Winner stand, because Jackson, it is that time for Pick a Winner.
Yes, it is everybody's favorite time of the show. Pick a winner. Let us know the winner in the chat and comments and across social media. So nobody has earned the bonus points for the weekend sweep, meaning that jackpot now grows to 6 points. Matt B, Ben, Matt W, and Alex from Twitter have all scored at least 1 point. Matt B with 2 points so far, but we still have plenty of races to go this season and in our monthly contest. So comment who will win the races to get your name on the leaderboard. We're going to start by picking the F1 winner.
I wonder who. Yesterday, or actually earlier this morning, if you had asked me during the earlier sessions of qualifying, I would have said Carlos Sainz. But after seeing Max Verstappen on pole, unless there's a big crash or somebody slashes Max's tires, he's definitely going to win.
Yeah, I have to go with Max. I mean, Carlos needs to have a flawless race. Can Ferrari handle under the pressure? I don't know. Max clean start runs away with it.
Yeah, I'm also going to have to go with Max for the win. All right, so now we move on to our special F1 pick where we pick the 7th place finisher. Ben and Jackson, live from Thermal, are tied for the lead. So Isha, who is going to finish 7th in the Grand Prix?
I'm going to go with the man who qualified in 7th as well, George Russell.
Wow. Gee whiz. I'm going to go Oscar Piastri. Not a good race. 7th place for him.
Isha, I'm also going to go with George Russell starting in 7th. I don't see a lot of movement above or below Russell. All right, now we move over to the IndyCar Thermal Special Event. Isha, who's going to win the not quite $1 million prize, but the $1 million challenge?
I'm going to go with, let's say, Alex Palou.
I'm going to go with a surprise just because I feel like, okay, second race in this car, topping the charts right now. Callum Ilott is going to steal the headlines and get the win.
You guys have selected the two that I was trying to choose between, and I think I'm going to have to go with the old reliable Alex Palou for the win at Thermal. Now we can head to NASCAR at Circuit of the Americas, first road course race of the season. Isha, who's getting it done?
I'm going to pick the points leader, Kyle Larson.
I feel like I can't go against him because I didn't pick him the last time and he won. I'm going with Shane Van Gisbergen to get the second win.
Interesting. SVG getting 2 wins in 3 starts, that would be wild. I'm going to have to go with Tyler Reddick. I think he's going to go back-to-back at Dakota. All right, now on to the Supercars race. Isha, go ahead and give us a winner for that one.
We've got a busy few days, lots of picks. But for Supercars, I'm going to go Brock Feeney.
Brock Feeney or Will Brown, it just seems to keep alternating. I think Brock Feeney's going to get the upper hand. Brock Feeney.
All right, I'm gonna ride the tide here and go with Brock Feeney and say he can keep it going this weekend. All right, let's take a look at the chat and some of our race picks from in there. Adam picking Scott McLaughlin to win the IndyCar event. Definitely a solid pick any weekend. The Max Verstappen pick, of course. And another, Joe, you got another SVG pick for that Dakota win. And then this Lando Norris for the 7th place finish in Australia.
Interesting. Lando for 7th because I feel like that would be a huge disappointment considering where that team is. But we'll find out. We'll recap it tomorrow on Grid Live Wrap-Up. And, of course, full report from Jackson tonight and tomorrow as well as he is in the Thermal Club. Encourage everyone. Be sure to invest in us. All these fine investors calling the show, Mark, Rob, and David, Matthew, invest in us each and every month. They all have gotten Grid Network stickers. So if you want some Grid Network stickers, just invest in us, and we'll send them out after the first month of investment. And you can do it one time through Buy Me Coffee. Jason leads that leaderboard right now. If you want to buy a cup of coffee or a YouTube super chat for Jackson at the Thermal Club or any member of the Grid Network team, just go ahead, do so, mention their name, and we'll forward them your contribution. And of course, easiest way, subscribe, hit the bell icon to follow us. GridRanking.com for articles from Matthew Bro of NASCAR and Jackson Lambros over at Thermal Club with all the action, and a lot of action this weekend. Grid wrap-up tomorrow, Grid encore on Monday, and then we're back to doing this all over again with Grid tonight. Women in Motorsports will be back, and then, of course, here we go again. Grid race, Grid Live pre-race. For Jackson and Isha and for Jackson Lambros at the Thermal Club, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.